So should we bring in the closer?
I
And
think it'd be a good time for that.
all right.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Free Baseball Podcast presented by the Athletes Hub. It's episode number 88, 2 off of 90 and 12 off of 100 for the boys. Going strong, finally back on a normal schedule. How's it going, Jake?
It's going. I went to the dentist this morning to get a filling filled again. It fell out. It's on like the back of my last tooth. And I got it because one of my wisdom teeth was sideways, the one right there. So it allowed a cavity to form, not one to have many cavities. That's just my second one. But it fell out. So I had to go redo it, but I scheduled it for 9 a.m. and it was not the way to wake up. Like going in there, 9 a.m. They're sticking needles in my mouth, they're numbing half of my face, and then they're drilling in my tooth. And I'm like, okay, cool. Now I get to go to work. So it was definitely an interesting start to the day, but now we get to wind down with some baseball discussion.
Got to talk about going to work, and now we can talk about getting to play the new MLB The Show game, which we got a new cover athlete for, and it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which, did you see the joke tweet that was like, oh yeah, Vladdy has like one of his worst seasons, and they're going to make him like MLB The Show cover athlete, cool athlete and all, but like, I don't know. This sort of feels kind of like a weirder thing by the year. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was funny that people were comparing like his WAR to other guys. I think he had less than 2 WAR or something.
I think so.
Yeah, so they were just being like, oh, so why doesn't this terrible player get to be on MLB The Show? And then I saw another one where they said, oh, I fixed it for you. And they just put a bunch of McDonald's logos on it. And I was like,
he had literally one WAR.
Not great. So, I mean, it's interesting. He's got star power. Like, we've known who he was since the minor leagues. And that sort of felt similar when they chose Jazz last year. Was like, he's an exciting player that I think gets people excited to watch play. He's just never healthy. At least Vladdy's healthy, and he's had an MVP caliber season in the past. So I think he is a step up from Jazz. Maybe not the same charisma, but he does have, I think, the star power that you look for. But it's not like, I don't know. These are the two athletes we have following Shohei Ohtani, the best player of all time, Jazz Chisholm and Vlad Jr. And before that, it was Tatis. So we've had some like pretty astronomical players followed by some players that you wouldn't really consider to be in the MVP conversation. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has got some pretty interesting projections for this next year, and he has had a pretty storied career throughout, his time in professional baseball. But it is an interesting one, given that, you have like, I don't know, Adley Rutschman, Ronald Acuna Jr., Corbin Carroll, just all these like bright young stars. But maybe Vladdy will have a big year and prove us wrong.
Yeah, maybe this will be a catalyst for a huge season for Vladdy. But I kind of expected it to be like Ronald Acuna Jr. just after the season he had. I think they spoiled like a little bit of like the colors because, you can see like all the details being the yellow, the blue, and the red. I figured they would probably do a little bit more for Ronald, but it's Vladdy. It's a video game, to be honest. Like, it's really not all that big a deal.
Are you going to buy it?
Yeah, I always buy it.
Me too. Yeah. Yellow, blue, and red, though. I mean, that can throw you off because the Braves are blue and red. And then Ronald has all that yellow gear that he wears, the elbow pad and the shoes and the socks and everything. So, yeah, I mean, they did. I don't know why they have yellow in there.
Well, he's from Venice. Well, I expected it to be Ronald because it's the Venezuela colors.
Okay.
So, like, it's the colors of the flag of the country he's from. I was like, I don't really understand why they did this.
Then what is this yellow? Yeah.
Weird. Yeah, so that's why I expected that, because they posted part of the cover first, and then they posted like the stance, so you could kind of tell it was a right-handed hitter or whatever.
Yeah, I mean they didn't post that. I think Fox Sports MLB posted that, and it was sort of just like supposed to be a generic player. But that was funny because that led to a lot of baseball memes where people were like just pulling up guys with similar generic. Yeah, I saw Stuart Fairchild. Just they're just finding like the worst players. They're like, oh my god. No way. So, yeah, this is cool. I'm always pumped for this time of the season. It looks like the game's going to come out in mid-March. But just the announcements for what's going to make the game different for 2024 and like what new legends we're going to have, I think is honestly the most hype I ever get. I used to get really hyped for all the updates that they would make throughout the year. But this past season, I just did not play a lot online, which I go ahead.
I didn't either because Diamond Dynasty was like a real grind. Like,
Yeah, I didn't know what I know what they changed, but I didn't know exactly like what made it that I didn't want to play. I think it was the seasons where it's just like, okay, if I'm gonna grind and I have time, I can grind for a certain amount of cards, and then I can't use them like a month from now.
yeah, I did
And
not
then
like that.
when I don't
I'm
have
hoping
time to
they'll get
grind
rid of
again.
that.
Yeah, so we'll see how they fix that. And there have been years past where I just put in tons of hours, but actually this year I fantasy drafted a franchise with legends turned on, and I actually played the entire season on the hardest mode. I made the playoffs. I won every single game in the playoffs, and I won the World Series. And that's the first time I've done that in like a decade, maybe more.
That's sick. Who
I
was
played
the
every
MVP of the squad?
John Donaldson, the Negro League's two-way player, won me the Cy Young and was World Series MVP. So I'll give it to him.
That's sick. Shout out to him. Those cards were really fun this year. I like that they did that with the storylines.
Yeah,
hopefully, we'll see more with that.
I did not play storylines at all.
The storylines were really cool.
I know. I should try them out. I still have time.
Yeah, definitely. So we can talk about another storyline regarding baseball, and this time it's regarding the next wave. And we can talk about the top 100 prospects because it's been updated. We have an updated top 10 with some really familiar names. So if you want to run down the list and talk about some of the changes to this top 10, if there are any, and then you can, we can go from there and just talk about the rest of the big changes to the top 100.
Yeah, we got our MLB pipeline top 100 prospects out. They had been slowly revealing the top 10 for each position, and now we have the top 10 overall. I don't have last year's top 10 to compare, but we've got a very exciting list. This is the future of baseball. Got at the top. I'll just go through it. Two Jacksons up top: Jackson Holiday of the Orioles and Jackson Chourio of the Brewers. Then we got last year's #1 overall pick, Paul Skeens of the Pirates, Junior Caminero of the Rays, who made his debut last year. So did Evan Carter, postseason star pretty much for the Rangers. He's at 5. At 6, his minor league teammate Wyatt Langford. And at 7, we got Dylan Cruz, the #2 overall pick from last year. He's on the Nationals. Then we have a super young catcher in Ethan Salas on the Padres. At 9, we have Colson Montgomery of the White Sox. And at 10, another 2023 draft pick, Walker Jenkins of the Minnesota Twins. This is an interesting list because we have a lot of guys a couple guys that we've already seen. We have got a lot of guys from last year's draft class, and then we have some international guys that are really working their way up. Who are you most excited for? And I feel like when you have a top 10, it's when you ask about excitement, it's such a subjective question that it's like choosing the #1 prospect, I don't think is a guaranteed answer, but I don't want to scare you away from that.
There's a few in here that are really interesting. Obviously, the #1 prospect is Jackson Holiday. That bat is super live, and we know the pedigree that he has just because, he's obviously the #1 prospect. And look at his dad. He was on the Hall of Fame ballot. I think Paul Skeens is probably my favorite. I think that the idea of him potentially being like the ace for a Pirates team that is sort of trying to hit this new wave to compete. And then his college teammate, Dylan Cruz, is another one that I'm super interested in. Kind of 5-tool guy. I'm in Nationals country as much as you can call it because they're so terrible that nobody really cares.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Dylan Cruz is a pretty cool one. I have the top 100 list from June. If we can talk about any of the changes from there, if you're up for it.
Yeah, just read down the list real quick.
So so from 2023 in June, we had Jackson Holiday still at #1. We had Ellie De La Cruz, who is obviously graduated now. We had Jackson Chourio, who is another mainstay from this list. Yuri Perez, Marcelo Mayer, James Wood, so another national. Jordan Lawler, Evan Carter, Bobby Miller, and Pete Crow Armstrong is our top 10.
So we had a lot of graduations and a couple guys that fell.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that seems fair. It just seems like they replaced a couple of the top guys like James Wood and whoever was right before him with the new draft picks, which is somewhat fair. I feel like when you have such a small sample size, it's hard to rank them. But we'll see that with some of the fallers later on that it's hard really to pin where a guy should rank after being drafted super highly. But yeah, I think my favorite amongst this group, it's hard to pick because Jackson Churio will play next year. Jackson Holiday is probably the highest ceiling and highest floor of everyone here. Um, Ethan Salas is super interesting just because he's so young and he's had so much success. He's already rose up to AA last year as an 18-year-old. So that's he's super advanced for a catching prospect. But I think my guy that I'm most excited about right now is Junior Caminero, mostly because we're going to see a lot of him next year, but he's got legit 70 grade power. He's going to be a third baseman on a team that I feel really confident about developing hitters, especially right-handed hitters like Caminero. So I'm really excited because he seems like the next wave of international talent that's probably going to join that. To me, he feels like the guy, if you had to choose the next in line for like the Juan Soto, Tatis, Julio Rodriguez, Vlad Jr., sort of that international talent that is just, out of this world. I think Caminero is the guy for me. Churio would probably be the guy that most people would choose, but for me, Caminero was just absolutely insane with the bat. Made his debut last year at 19 years old. So I'm super pumped for him.
Yeah, he was another one that I was pretty interested in, but it's a pretty strong top 10. I think there's a lot to be excited about for a lot of these guys, especially because a bunch of them seem really, really close, which is always extremely nice. We can talk about our biggest risers because we've had a lot of changes in the rankings, and we can talk about biggest fallers right after that because we've had quite a few huge names from the last few years genuinely just fall completely out of the top 100. So let's go over some of the biggest risers first in the new updated rankings.
Yeah. First, we got a shortstop for the Tampa Bay Rays, Carson Williams. And he is a really good fielder, maybe the best fielder on the infield in the minor leagues. Incredible arm, incredible range. And he started to hit the ball pretty well as also last year. My Fangraphs looks wild. That is not what it's supposed to look like. There we go. Last year, he hit 23 home runs and stole 17 bases. He strikes out a lot, so there is a possibility he's not much of a hitter and is more of a guy with a low 200s batting average with a little bit of pop and a little bit of speed. But what makes him what gives him such a high ranking and what pushed him up from 72 to 20 is the fact that he is just an incredible fielder.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about Carson Williams, and then our next one we can talk about our first outfield prospect we can go over, which is Chase DeLauder, the Cleveland Guardians. He's gone all the way up from 82 to 31. What do we have about Mr. DeLauder?
He's just got incredible contact skills. He's still pretty young and hasn't really rose that much through the minors. Last year, ended the year at AA, but he was a former 16th overall pick in 2022. And across 3 levels last year, he consistently batted well over 300. His longest stop was 42 games at high A. He batted 366 there. So definitely got some legit contact potential. And that's a pretty exciting one, especially for a Cleveland team that just always is looking for outfield talent. It's sort of, they're the, I don't know, antithesis is too strong of a word or not the right word, but they're similar to the Angels where they're always looking for pitching. The Guardians just can never get enough outfield talent.
DeLauder was the two-way guy, right? He was a two-way guy in college.
I'll take your word for it.
I'm pretty sure he was a two-way guy. He went to JMU, which is relatively close to me. So I'm pretty stoked for him just because that's kind of a local-ish kind of guy. And then another one I'm super excited about is Heston Kierstad, who's gone from 80 to 32. So we're still pretty close with DeLauder. But Kierstad, that guy, I think, has a really, really high ceiling for a Baltimore team. That is definitely – it's hard to say on the rise because they were so good last year, but continuing to rise potentially even greater to legitimate contention. So what's the outlook on Heston Kierstad?
Well, I think he fell a lot because of injuries to start out his minor league career. So he really, after being drafted second overall in 2020, which was somewhat of a somewhat of a reach. He was a below market guy in terms of signing bonus. He made his debut in 2022, and it took him a little while to get going. And in 2023, he got back on track. 21 home runs, batted over 300 across AA and AAA, and he ended up making his debut at the end of the year. I think he's just a guy that's a pure hitter. He's going to be very solid across the board. Probably doesn't walk a lot, doesn't strike out too much. But what he does do is he hits for power and he hits for decent contact as well. So that's going to be like a middle of the order to me. Feels like just a clear like number 5 hitter, 5 or 6 hitter who's going to be very solid for the Orioles if he can, transfer that into the majors.
Yeah, he was one of the ones when he was drafted that I was pretty high on a couple years ago. So I'm really excited to potentially see him make his debut in the next year or so. We've got another outfielder, and then we will finally move on to non-outfielders. And this one is Emmanuel Rodriguez from the Minnesota Twins, moving up from 88 all the way to 42. So what do we have on? It's weird to call him Erod. Maybe not yet. Maybe Emmanuel Rodriguez for the Twins.
You can call him M-Rod.
M-Rod is sick. Let's do that.
All right. He walks a ton, 20% of the time last year at high A as a 20-year-old, 16 home runs and 20 stolen bases. So that's really interesting. He's going to need to control his strikeouts, but those are definitely some interesting tools just to be able to walk that much and show that much speed is very interesting for a guy in the outfield.
Yeah, I mean, he hit 16 home runs last year too, 145 WRC plus. He was in the Polanco trade, correct?
No, that's Gabriel Gonzalez.
Gabriel Gonzalez. Okay, my fault. Wrong dude. Okay.
Do you even know ball?
No, I do not. We can talk about starting pitching prospect for the San Diego Padres, Dylan Lesko, moving up from just barely cracking the list at 100, going up to 56.
Yeah, this one makes a lot of sense. Similarly to Kierstad, where he was drafted 15th overall in 2022, but he didn't make his debut until 2023. And I think he was pretty solid, showed a really great changeup, one of the best in the minor leagues. And while he didn't get above high A, he's still only 19, and he had some pretty great strikeout numbers, well over 30% throughout the minors last year. So this is a guy that's probably going to need a little bit more time to develop, considering his age and the injuries that he dealt with to start his career. But I think the prospect rankers are pretty excited about him.
Yeah, changeup definitely really, really disgusting from Lesko. And then our last one to talk about is a shortstop prospect from our favorite baseball team, the Colorado Rockies, and that is Adael Amador, moving up from 68, going up 40 spots to 28. So just about there for the Rockies. They got some guys that maybe don't suck at baseball.
Yeah, I don't know why he was ranked so low, but maybe it's just like his continued success as he climbs the minor league ladder is probably why he went from sort of a mid-ranked prospect to a top quarter prospect, where he's had 15 home runs and 26 stolen bases and batted 292 in 2022. And then last year he moved up to high A, 9 home runs, 12 stolen bases, batted 302. So the contact and speed is there. He's holding his own at shortstop, and he's striking out just 10% of the time. So that bodes well for the continuation of his contact stroke. So that's a pretty exciting one, especially for a guy that's a prospect of the Rockies. If you put him in Colorado and he maintains those contact skills, this is a guy that's going to continuously hit over 300 with the ability to play shortstop. And he's a switch hitter, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, he has a lot of tools that are there to be excited about. Doesn't strike out very much. He's actually one of only 2 players in high A, because he's still sort of a low prospect last year, that had an ISO above 200 and a strikeout percentage below 15% with a minimum of 180 plate appearances. So it's just him, and it's Blaze Jordan, who, if you're unfamiliar with him, I mean, he was like supposed to be one of the top hitting prospects from a couple years ago. It's sort of struggled a little bit, but he struck out 10% of the time last year. Like, that's outrageous for a young guy. Typically that's something that a lot of players struggle with, especially if they have a really good hit tool. And it seems like he's actually finding a little bit of power in his swing. Switch hitter too, should play well in Colorado. So hopefully the Rockies can find their way back to being at least remotely relevant with him on the way. And that is sort of the end of where we can talk very good about the farm system for now. And we have to talk about obviously the ones that have fallen the furthest from these rankings. So I know you're going to take some sort of joy in the first one being a Dodger. So tell us about Diego Cartaya.
Yeah, no, I want every prospect to succeed. It's just once they get to the major leagues, that's when I want things to fall apart.
Maybe once they trade him. Maybe if they trade him, it'll be great.
Yeah, Diego Cartaya looked to be like the next coming of the top catching prospect in baseball after multiple years in the low levels of the minors. He just continued to have success. But then last year, 2023 at AA, he maintained his power stroke, 19 home runs, but he batted 189 with a 71 WRC plus. The strikeouts went through the roof, and clearly his prospect star has fallen dramatically. To be a guy that's in the top 15 to go completely off the list is pretty crazy. So definitely an unfortunate year for Cartaya. So he's got a lot to prove in 2024.
Yeah, he was supposed to be one of the top catching prospects of the class in general, and now he's not even the top catching prospect with the Dodgers anymore, based on the rankings, because Dalton Rushing has gone past him. And we can talk about one that kind of hurt me because I was really, really big on him when he got drafted, and it is Zach Veen. We talked nice about Ariel Amador. Unfortunately, nothing can go right for the Rockies. Zach Veen has fallen pretty far.
Yeah, I feel like I remember when he was drafted, and we were pretty excited about what he could do. And he was drafted right next to Robert Hassel, which is very interesting because we had spoken on the podcast before that I think Zach Veen and Robert Hassel III have been like intrinsically linked throughout their careers, where throughout the minor leagues they sort of rose together. Hassel was traded and Veen wasn't, but they were sort of like always ranked around each other and had similar skills. And now it's really crazy to see both of these guys are former top 50 prospects that has now fallen off the list completely. Robert Hassel III was the next one we were going to talk about, who's on the Nationals, was part of the Juan Soto trade. So that's crazy that both of them, I've always put them together in my mind, and now both of them are not ranked prospects, which is crazy. But yeah, Veen was definitely a contact speed guy throughout his college career, and then when he started out in the minors, he proved that as well with the potential for power. But as he's risen up the levels in AA last year, he dealt with injuries. He only played in 46 games, but then he also batted 209 with a 308 slug, only had 2 home runs, 22 stolen bases. So maybe with some better injury luck, he'll be back out there, but he does look like he has some contact issues, and the power may not play out like we expected, but he's still just 22, but we are relying on Rockies player development.
Yeah, and that's not something to rely on if you're unfamiliar with the sport in general. And you talked about Robert Hassel III, so it's just fitting that we can go right now to talk about Robert Hassel III, who's gone from 35th to unranked. And that's kind of difficult for the Washington Nationals, who are still trying to rebuild after trading away Juan Soto. And he was one of the big, huge centerpieces in that deal.
Yeah. So just same thing I said about Zach Veen, except without getting injured. Just the power never showed up. 324 slug, just 8 home runs. And then he struck out way too much, 32% of the time. So the contact issues were very clear. He batted just 225. Still a very athletic guy, has some speed, clearly has the ability to hit the ball over the fence. We'll just need to look to do that more consistently and control the strike zone a little bit better, or, he could fizzle out.
Yeah, he's one that I'm a little bit concerned about. And another one that they are also finding some concern about is another outfield prospect that was supposed to be pretty high up there. He was the 46th prospect last year, and it's Elijah Green, who's also fallen completely out of the top 100.
Yeah, he was the 5th overall pick in 2022. So it's crazy how quickly he's fallen. But the issues with the strikeouts are like so obvious. It's almost astonishing, where he stole 30 bases last year. He's got 70 grade raw power according to Fangraphs, yet he struck out 42% of the time, pulling his batting average down to 210. His slugging was under 310. It's crazy how tooled up this guy is. He's got a great walk rate. He is super fast. He's got clear raw power, but he just can't hit the ball. He just misses the ball all the time. So that's crazy. I mean, those are incredible strikeout numbers for a guy at A ball. Like he's got a long way to go to get back to where we expected him to be. So it's going to take a lot. And that's crazy that in 3 draft classes, they picked 2 outfielders in the first round, and both of them have fallen apart already.
Yeah, and the strikeout numbers are worrying because they've been consistent. At the 3 levels he's played, the lowest strikeout percentage he's posted is just under 38%. Like, that's really not what you want to see, especially at the low levels of the minors. That's kind of a warning sign. So hopefully he can get that figured out. We talk about their interdivision rival, the Mets, who their catching prospect, Kevin, I think it's Parada, has gone from 36th to unranked also.
Yeah, this is another first-round pick, 11th overall in 2022 that's just fallen off. In high A last year, he was like solid, but it wasn't anything that's going to blow you away for a 21-year-old at high A, 11 home runs, batted .265. So it's just pretty mediocre results. And when he hit Double A, he struggled across 14 games. So at this point, it's sort of like he's got to prove that he's not just, just a guy. Where it's like that's what it seemed like he was last year. When you're a first-round pick, you really got to prove I'm a special prospect. I'm a special baseball player that should be up in the majors as soon as possible. But this seems like a guy that is probably going to go through more growing pains as he rises through the minors as an older player for the levels that he's at. But he's got the potential considering where he was drafted. But right now it's looking like it feels like he's going to be a backup catcher.
Yeah, a lot of the struggles supposedly too. I mean, we talked about his offensive numbers that apparently they're middling numbers. Apparently, a large struggle with him too in his development is he's been a pretty poor defender, which kind of is going to really, really hurt you if you are a catching prospect, because that's the number one thing that they're usually judged on, just in general, if they're going to have any longevity at the position, unless they're genuinely like a excellent hitter for the position, which we just said the numbers he's posting at the low levels of the minors are not very good. So that's kind of concerning here. We can talk about the Guardians, talked about them earlier, a couple risers. Unfortunately, they have a faller here as well. And it's Daniel Espino going from 16, just outside the top 10, to just barely in the top 100, right at it, at 100.
Yeah, it would be pretty messed up if they kicked him all the way off the list. But it is warranted. The guy's tossed just 18 in a third inning since 2021 due to a plethora of injuries. I think he underwent Tommy John surgery before the start of last year. We were expecting him to make his debut. No, it wasn't. He missed most of the season with knee and shoulder issues, the latter of which bled into 2023. So it was a shoulder injury. But either way, this is a guy that's been unable to stay healthy for long periods of time. The most innings we've seen him pitch in his season are 91 2/3, and that was in 2021. So I think he's still got all of the stuff that made him super exciting: an 80 grade fastball, 60 grade slider, but he's going to need to stay healthy if he wants to pitch in the majors at all.
Yeah, that's a concerning one. Just, you said 18 innings since 2021 is not great at all. Surprised they did leave him on the list at that because of that, but still hanging on just because of the raw tools you said. But I don't know. It feels like it's going to be a huge season for him if he's going to really have a future here. Talk about another one that's supposed to have an extremely bright future for a team that has an extremely bright future, but his prospect star has fallen a little bit, and it's Drew Jones, son of Hall of Fame balladee Andrew Jones, gone from number 15 to 78th on the list.
Yeah. And that's crazy just to see him beside Jackson Holliday, who was the first overall pick in 2022, where Jones was the second overall pick and was definitely in consideration for number 1 overall, given how badly he destroyed high school pitching. But it looks like he's struggled so far in professional baseball, just not being able to show the same power and athleticism and contact skills that he did in his high school days. And I feel like this is just like, he's just so raw at this point, where it's like he's got to learn a lot of baseball. He's got to he walks enough, but he's going to need to learn some more fundamentals. I'm obviously not a prospect guy with the way I'm talking about this, but I think the vibe I get from him is everything's there. They just, it's going to take a while for him to unlock it as he sort of learns more. But it is also the parallels between him and Holiday bleed further in that both of their dads were former major leaguers. So it's like they're both sort of coming from the same background where they dominated high school, and we're just seeing, the difference between these two guys. And I don't know if it's the organizations that can be blamed or if it's just these two players in general, but I still have high hopes for Drew Jones. And I think prospect analyzers do as well, considering they still have him inside the top 80, but there's a clear lack of performance that, he's going to need to show if he wants to reach the heights that the Diamondbacks put on him when they drafted him number 2.
Definitely so. And there's another one that's fallen a little bit here that feels like he's got a lot to live up to as well, because it feels like he's been a top prospect for quite a while, and it's Andrew Painter for the Phillies, who's fallen from 6th to 27th on the list. And why is it that his prospect star has fallen, Jake?
Same reason as Daniel Espino, just a guy that got injured before 2023. He was the game's top pitching prospect. They put him above Grayson Rodriguez before the year started, and then he underwent Tommy John surgery, I'm pretty sure. And it doesn't say. He had some sort of injury that knocked him out for the rest of the year, but he definitely still has a ton of potential. He was so amazing throughout his minor league career that the highest ERA he posted was 2.54. And that was at Double-A as a 19-year-old. So the fact that his fall was so great, more than 20 spots, and it was only to 27, just shows that this guy has a ton of potential. He just needs to get back on the field and prove that he still got it.
Definitely so. I mean, he has so many crazy tools, 70 grade fastball. The guy's got a huge frame, just needs to stay healthy and throw for him to continue to just have a chance at this. We can talk about another NL team. We can talk about the Cincinnati Reds, who had Edwin Arroyo, shortstop prospect, fall from 44th on the list to 67th. So not the most precipitous drop, but still not where you want to be. You want to be going up, not going down.
Yeah, no, and it's I feel like it's hard to tell. Like, obviously his contact skills fell a lot. He batted 316 in 2022 at A-ball, and then at high A-ball he batted 248. But he still maintained the same power and speed numbers. He played shortstop. Maybe there's a little bit of the Reds don't really have a lot of room for him as he's a middle infielder, and their infield is so stacked with Candelario and Jonathan India there alongside all the other youngsters they have in the infield. So maybe there's a little bit of that factoring in, but clearly because the tools are still there and he's shown the ability to hit for a high average in the past, that I think they still have some hope, but it's pretty clear that he was helped out by a 386 BABIP in 22, because it fell down to just 297, which is very average. And so I think he's probably a guy that's going to have a lower average than you expected, but the home runs and stolen bases are going to be there. But clearly the ceiling isn't as high as we thought last year.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason for his drop, is that that ceiling has just not really shown. He just seems more like a guy that could be a mid-level guy, productive big league player, but not nearly a guy. Like, you want your top 100 prospects to be extremely productive players, everyday starters, or if you're closer to the top, 40 or so, especially the top 10, those are the guys that are expected to be like franchise altering guys or extremely good. And he just kind of seems like a guy, which is unfortunate, but hopefully he'll prove us wrong. And then this one hurts for me because he was one of my favorite prospects, but it's Tampa Bay Rays third base prospect Curtis Mead falling 22 spots from 33 to 55. So him and his struggles can talk about now, which is going to hurt my feelings.
He wasn't that bad last year. Yeah, it's crazy how far he's fallen. He batted 294, but the power wasn't really there. Just 9 home runs in 61 games. So he's more of a contact guy, and that's what he's been throughout his career. His major league debut was pretty underwhelming. He had 24 games, and it came out to a WRC plus of just 95. But I think the biggest reason he's fallen so much is his lack of a position. He's like a second baseman, third baseman. The Rays are pretty covered there with Isaac Paredes at third and Junior Caminero as well. And they got other guys at second base. They're pretty solid in those positions. And he is just not a great defender. And so his bat really has to stand out. And while it was really good last year, 123 WRC plus, it's like it doesn't have the same ceiling that it used to. So I think 55 probably makes more sense than 33 just in general, considering if we're having more realistic expectations of what a guy like this can do, like a pretty solid average hitter who doesn't bring a lot to the table defensively.
Yeah. This is a guy that started a playoff game last year and has fallen still. But yeah, this one hurts. Hopefully he can figure this out because he's probably going to end up playing a lot for the Rays this year just because of their weird little infield situation brought on by one dickhead we're really not going to talk about a whole lot. But yeah, hopefully Curtis Mead can figure this out. And then we have our complete farm reports. And we can talk about my favorite baseball team because they have the most top 100 prospects in the entire list with 7.
Yeah, pretty impressive. That's awesome. And then you have Baltimore at second with 6, and then the Padres, Pirates, and Reds each have 5. But if you grade them out in terms of prospect points, which MLB Pipeline likes to do, where sort of each level of prospect ranking you move up, you get an additional point. So the 100th ranked prospect gives the team 1 point, and the number 1 ranked prospect gives the team 100 points. So it's more quality over quantity, but a combination of that. The Orioles outpaced the Cubs despite 1 fewer top 100 prospect. But the Cubs are second ahead of the Padres, Brewers, Tigers, Rays, Red Sox, Nationals, Rangers, and Twins.
Yeah, the best thing about the Cubs is that all of their guys, for the most part, 5 of which actually of their top 7 are in the top 50, which is pretty cool. A lot of guys there to be excited about if you're a Cubs fan. I think the total farm reports, a lot of the teams on here were a little bit surprising. And I think it's interesting, even after sort of like it felt like the Padres have spent the last few years in their efforts to contend completely gutting their farm system, and they still have a pretty high ranked farm system. We said 6 top 100 prospects, and then some guys that are still pretty close to the majors. That was sort of a surprising one for me as well. And then a few teams that I figured would be a little bit closer and didn't quite crack that. Because we talked about the prospect points and things like that, where the Pirates have 5 and they're not in the top 10 for the prospect points, which is like crazy. It feels weird and feels kind of bad. But they have some of my favorite prospects too, so I'm sort of excited for their outlook. But that's it on farm reports, unless there's anything else that you'd want to touch on.
No, I'm good.
Awesome. And we can talk about off-season transactions where big league players are getting paid. And we can start with former San Francisco Giant and Cub. So we can talk about our favorite baseball teams. And this time it's Jock Peterson signing with the Arizona Diamondbacks for a 1-year, $9.5 million deal. There is an option for 2025. It's for $14 million. It's got a $3 million buyout. The Diamondbacks are able to add a little more thump to their lineup, which sort of sorely, at least for me, sorely felt like they needed a little bit more pop.
Yeah, that felt like all they were missing on their team. Obviously, they could use more starting pitching, and relievers are good for any team, but this team clearly was missing that thump in the middle of their lineup. I thought Jorge Soler was going to be a fit for them, but Peterson makes more sense as a cheaper guy on a 1-year deal. And yeah, I mean, he just stays in the NL West. He's played for the Dodgers and Giants, now to the Diamondbacks. He's just got 2 more teams to hit before all is said and done. But yeah, he's a really fun player. I think he's a great clubhouse guy, just in terms of he has fun. It is funny though that they replaced their DH from last year, or partially DH, Tommy Pham, with the guy that Tommy Pham slapped in Jock Peterson. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, I think Jock fits with this team. It's a fun young team, and he's going to provide some platoon-worthy DH work for them.
Also, a lot of playoff experience, been there quite a few times with the Dodgers. Obviously, won World Series with the Braves. So there's a lot to like about this move. 1-year deal, really no risk. I think he adds a lot to this lineup. It's a team that can platoon too. They have a lot of outfield depth, so he's not going to have to play every day. They can let him DH and just be like, here, Jock, just go try to hit a home run every single time you're up there. And I think that works for them. The Rangers added to their bullpen. Said it's important for every team to really go after relievers, and it felt like the Rangers have sort of neglected this, but they end up with a guy. They've got David Robertson on a 1-year deal worth $10 million. It's a $7 million option. It's a mutual option for 2025. It's got a $1.5 million buyout. $10 million deal, $5 million of which is going to be deferred, and $1 million is going to be paid out every year between 2027 and 2031, which I really can't imagine David Robertson is going to be pitching by that point.
Well, you never know.
You never know, but for me, I feel like that's not.
Hey, if I'm getting $10 million as a 39-year-old, of course I'm going to continue to try to pitch. But one of the most consistent players of the last decade plus, 15 years he's been pitching, and there was really only a couple years where he was not good, and it was because he was injured. 2019 to 2021, he toshes 18 2/3 innings, and during that time he had an ERA over 4. So he was clearly not at his best, but it was because of injuries. Other than that, every other year he's basically thrown 60 innings and had an ERA below 3.5, and that's what you can rely on him. We saw him do that last year. I was so sort of concerned about the Rangers when they missed out on all the top relief talent in terms of, Josh Hader, Robert Stevenson, even, Craig Kimbrell, and they missed out on just every single reliever. And I was like, okay, are they really just not going to go get anyone? Because after winning the World Series, you want to see a team use their new funds to go out and improve their team. And the one area of improvement this team needed was in the bullpen. They lost Jordan Montgomery, and the only move they had made this offseason was adding Kirby Yates. And I was like, that's not going to be enough, my guys. Good thing they went out and got David Robertson. He, like I said, very consistent, but it is a weird ad. I wish they would have gone sort of bigger, considering everything's bigger in Texas. But also, they should have a lot of money to be able to go out and pay for these guys. And they still have a lot of outfield depth that I think they could deal from if they want to do something else, get another starter or get another reliever. But it looks like David Robertson could be the closer here. It's going to be between him and Jose Leclerc, but there's also the chance that Josh Sborz could play into this one. But yeah, pretty crazy. David Robertson's going to be closing for one more year at the age of 39.
Yeah, I know we talked about their sort of efforts in the relief market, and when we did our predictions, I think we talked about the possibility of Hader being there. I know I predicted Jordan Hicks to go there, and it felt like they did sort of really fail to add, so I'm glad that they were able to get David Robertson, which is at least better than nothing. And I do think he is good. It just depends on how much longer is this guy going to be good, because he's 39, like you said. He's been pitching for 15 years. Typically guys, start to be a little bit bad the older they get. But maybe David Robertson is going to be the one to buck that trend, and the Rangers can defend their crown. Obviously, the World Series champions. We can talk about former World Series champions, the Royals. Feels like forever ago, because it is almost forever ago, almost 10 years ago now. They signed Adam Frazier to a 1-year, $2 million deal with an $8.5 million mutual option for 2025. That has a $2.5 million buyout. Yeah, absolutely no chance that option's getting picked up. Adam Frazier is a guy that plays baseball and will be doing that this year for the Kansas City Royals. Is there really a whole lot to talk about with him? Because, God, the Royals offseason looks so weird.
Yeah, they really have spent a lot of money this offseason, which is really interesting. They spent
a lot of money on guys that are like really just there. Like, yeah. I don't know if mid's like too unfair.
We'll show you mid.
Yeah, we'll show you mid when we win 64 games.
Yeah. This offseason they've added Hunter Renfroe, Adam Frazier, Garrett Hampson, Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, and Will Smith and Nick Anderson and Chris Stratton.
Those are guys, the real who's who of dudes that play baseball still.
Yeah. Did they sign anybody that wasn't white? No.
No, and actually, as part of this deal, they had to DFA Samad Taylor, and they traded him. They traded him. So
they just want all white guys on their team. That's crazy.
it's a shame. They got
Anyway,
the Negro League Hall of Fame in their backyard.
anyway, I don't know what it is about Adam Frazier, but I've always liked him.
I do too. I don't have anything against him.
Yeah, I haven't watched him play, but he's just so mid. And I sort of like that about him.
Rock steady. He's a guy. Yeah. He's just a guy that plays second base, and he's going to play it pretty well, and he's going to not be completely useless hitting, and he's just going to be there. Like it's not a guy you're going to be like, oh man, this dude's carrying our team. He's not garbage.
No, he's got the skill set of a guy that's got that dog in him, but he doesn't have that dog in him. You know,
for sure.
It's like you look at his numbers, and you're like, oh, he must have the dog in him, and he does not. And that's fine with me. I think that's what makes him more endearing. And last year too, I was really excited because his expected metrics were way lower than he was hitting. And so I expected a big second half breakout. I think he had a pretty solid second half, but he did set a career high in home runs, tied his career high in stolen bases. And I feel like he's a very solid addition, a guy that can play second base and then all across the outfield, which is, he's just going to be a solid utility guy for a team that has a lot of young guys in those positions. So he should work out pretty well.
Yeah. The only thing, like I said, the only thing that really kind of turns me off of this deal is they gave up because they had to make room on the 40-man for him. They gave up Samad Taylor, who I think is a guy that is interesting, especially for a team that, let's face it, if they're with all their superstar additions that they've made that we talked about, are they going to win the division? I still don't think so. That division is really weak, but they still also, as a team, feel really weak. And they got Adam Frazier, he's 31. We know what Adam Frazier is. What? He's a dog in him kind of player.
How did they do that?
What do you mean?
I'm looking at Samad Taylor, and it's like, oh, what if Adam Frazier was 24 years old?
Yeah, that guy's good. That guy is good, and he sort of struggled in his.
He plays the same positions.
He's also a utility player. He can play literally everything. In case you didn't know, his ZiPS projections too are higher than Adam Frazier. So he's projected for better numbers and higher WAR than Adam Frazier. The guy does a lot for that team. To me, that move sort of sucks. He walked a ton. He walked an absolute ton in AAA, 16%, I believe the number was. Doesn't strike out that much. It's about 21%. Last year sort of struggled in the big leagues, but he literally only got like a handful of games. And then you're getting a year, because let's face it, they're never going to pick out that option. You're getting a year of Adam Frazier for $2 million versus the control of Samad Taylor, who is now going to be on the Mariners. And Adam Frazier had a literal league worst hard hit rate. That guy is never going to do anything for you at the plate. That's that crazy. I don't hate Adam Frazier. I'm not trying to shit on him. It's just the corresponding move made no sense.
If you get rid of later.
If you get rid of someone else, fine. It's just I hated getting rid of Samad Taylor because I like that guy a lot.
Hey, the Mariners are going to make something of him.
Yeah, probably so. But yeah, other than that, that's a move. A great move, however, is the Cubs finally adding to their bullpen that desperately needed some help at the back end by signing Hector Neris, who probably one of the last really, really strong options in the relief market, at least in free agency. They signed him to a 1-year, $9 million deal. There's a $9 million club option that will vest into a player option if he makes at least 60 appearances. That is very attainable if you're unaware about Hector Neris. The incentives could max the deal out at $23.25 million over 2 years. If he hits all the escalators and incentives. And this was one that I was pretty stoked about to see it finally happen because they desperately needed someone. I know you predicted them getting Josh Hader, and your predictions did not happen, but Hector Neris feels like a pretty solid consolation prize.
Yeah, this deal was really funny because the guy was looking for like a 4-year deal for $50 million or something at the outset of this offseason.
Good luck.
Yeah. So when I saw like 1 year, $9 million come through, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. But yeah, I feel like the player option is all but certain to be vested, the guy has made over 70 appearances in each of the last 3 seasons. So 60 is highly attainable, especially if you go even further back, 4 out of the last 5 years. And one of those years is 2020.
Yeah.
He's made at least 60 appearances. So it's like, unless something drastic happens, he's going to do it. But very solid reliever. I think he was really lucky last year in terms of having such a good ERA, but he's a decent reliever. And the Cubs have actually been surprisingly good at developing relievers recently, but they really could use depth in this bullpen. And I think Neris provides that by moving everybody down a rung of the ladder, because before this move, it was like Drew Smiley's your second best setup option on roster resource. And I'm like, that's not it.
Good.
That's not going to cut it. And you got a bunch of young guys and a bunch of guys that are interesting, but to have a top 3 of Alzolay, Neris, and Merriweather is much more interesting now. So I think it's a very solid move. It's just, I'm sure Hector Neris was expecting to be a high paid closer somewhere else.
Yeah, for me, there's still a lot to like about the move. They've added to their bullpen. Obviously, they made the trade earlier with like Yency Almonte getting in there. The big thing for Hector Neris is the splitter, which they've actually sort of been pretty decent at developing guys that have pitch shapes pretty similar to that. Hector Neris probably had one of the best splitter, if not the best splitter of all relief pitchers last year. If you're unaware, generated a 171 batting average against, extremely good. 211 WOBA. And whiff rate 42%. So pretty good there. They've had a lot of success developing that with Mark Leiter Jr. So they'll potentially get a little bit more out of him as well. And I think he's got a real chance to close, if not be the setup option. And if Alzolay falters a little bit, sort of struggles, he'll kind of fall into that role as well. So I think this move is really solid. But there's definitely a chance that option is going to be picked up. The guy he throws innings and he's just good. He's just a rock steady guy, which felt like is what a lot of teams could have needed. And then I'm personally glad it was the Cubs. We can move on to another reliever signing, and that is the Mets re-signing Adam Ottavino, which the picture that they posted to show it was a guy stealing off of him, which is extremely funny. But Adam Ottavino signed a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. He declined a player option that was almost $7 million. Is a $6.75 million player option at the start of the offseason just to get no real offers and have to sign back with the Mets. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty rough. I think he said in an interview that he had declined it because he was unsure about the Mets sort of future. But it's so funny that he ended up losing more than $2 million because of that, which is pretty unfortunate. He'll be okay. $4.5 million is plenty for a reliever, but yeah, that's pretty funny. You rarely see that nowadays because a lot of times, like, the agents that players have are really smart. They know, like, hey, buddy, you're not going to get more than this. I would go for it. But it's funnier. It's even funnier because he went back to the same team, right? Because it's just like, yeah, you were just going to stay with them anyway. You could have just taken the money, but you wanted to go somewhere else. Nobody wanted you for as much as you wanted. Now you lost $2.5 million. So yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting like analytical analysis on like Ottavino if you want to talk about him, because for me, like, Ottavino has always been like a huge slider guy. Like that's sort of what you know Adam Ottavino for. He actually threw it the least amount of his entire career last year, and he mainly threw a bunch of sinkers, and that's because if you like cool analytical stuff, his slider actually has decreased on Stuff Plus. It's gone from pretty nasty. It was an 84% or an 84 Stuff Plus in 2022, dropped to 79. But his sinker really, really, really good. 2022, it was 126 Stuff Plus. Last year, 114. So he's gotten a little worse, but still getting results with the sinker. I think if he throws it a little more, he'll probably kind of continue to see some results. The picture that I don't remember what outlet it was that posted it was extremely funny because it was fucking Josh Bell stealing off of him, which is just hilarious to me. But I think Adam Ottavino is a solid reliever. It's just a solid reliever sort of contract. It's just, man, he looks really stupid for leaving over $2 million on the table.
Yeah, you got to blame
for
your
literally no reason.
You got to blame your agent for that one.
Yeah, fire your agent for that. That's so annoying. Got another deal that we can talk about, and it's the Oakland A's has signed a professional baseball player because that never happens anymore. And it's them signing Alex Wood, who absolutely refuses to leave California ever again, and he gets to stay. And he gets to stay in the Bay Area with the A's for now.
Yeah, crosses the Bay, goes to the A's. Yep, you're right for now. We don't know the details of the contract, but I expect it to be a 1-year deal, and I expect him to be traded at some point. But, he's an option. He's not going to take this team to the playoffs or anything, and he's not going to make an all-star team. But what he does do is he's going to eat a decent amount of innings, probably 130 to 140, and just take the workload off the plethora of young starting pitchers they have in Oakland. So, well, he's not going to take away any opportunities from them. I do think he will allow them to not have to go in there and immediately just take on a full major league workload, and they can sort of filter guys in and really take it slow on a bunch of these guys as they make their transition out of Oakland. This is probably the last year they're there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of moves like this too, because there's a lot of really exciting arms in that rotation. It just really sort of needs someone like a veteran presence to stay there and just be able to learn by watching. And Alex Wood has always seemed like one of the nicer guys in baseball, at least to me. So they can talk him, pick his brain, talk about pitching, and try to be a little bit better. Also takes a lot of the workload off of them because they had a few issues with injury last year. So a couple of guys that they need to sort of ease back into the rotation. Solid move, but it's fine. Happy here. Hopefully he can get the most out of it. They'll probably trade him at the deadline and hopefully go to a team that's contending. But yeah, solid move for the A's. And then another move we can talk about, which is an extension because the Tigers have extended Colt Keith, who's one of their top prospects. I think is he their top prospect currently?
He is not, because they drafted Max Clark last year, who's their top prospect at number 13. But Keith is their number 2 prospect, and he's the number 22 prospect in all of baseball on that new top 100 list.
Okay, he's penciled in to be their starting. I think he's penciled in to be their opening day second baseman, but they signed him to a 6-year extension worth $28.6 million. There's a club option in 2030 that's worth $10 million. Got a $2.6 million buyout. Another one in 2031, which is a $13 million club option, got a $1 million buyout, and then another one in 2032, which has it's a $15 million club option, $2 million buyout. The buyouts are sort of weird that it's like the money goes up and the buyout sort of becomes less from the first year, but it could max out at a 9-year deal worth $82 million for Colt Keith. And this kind of feels like pretty good business for the Tigers, who notoriously are not super big spenders. But they get to pencil in Colt Keith, hopefully for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, these types of moves are always really exciting for fans, because it almost guarantees these players will make their debut on opening day, which is super exciting. It always sucks to have to wait for prospects. But then you also have the flip side of like, if Keith does become a superstar, then he's being underpaid, but also you have like the Scott Kingerys and John Singletons and Evan Whites, where it's like either you were sort of too highly ranked, or the money sort of gets to your head, and then you really never reach your potential, and you sort of get in bank for not being a good baseball player. We've seen that countless number of times, but we've seen the opposite. So this is cool that we'll get to see Keith on opening day, and it's warranted given that he was incredible last year as a 21-year-old across AA and AAA, combined for 27 home runs, batted over 300, 325 at AA, 287 at AAA, and was just looking like a very, very advanced hitter. So that's really exciting. I think right now it's looking like if he plays in about right now, BATX has him for 67 games, 7 home runs, and a 246 average. I don't know why he would just play 67 games. But if he's more like the depth charts or Zips depth charts with 117 games, which makes more sense given that like is a guy of the future, you probably want him in there every day if you've signed him to that contract extension. Could be like a 15 home run hitter batting 250 and could go up from there. So it's a really exciting one. I always love seeing prospects debut on opening day.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about this one. Second base guy, walks a ton. I just like guys like that. he had a couple really, really big games. I think he hit for the cycle last year at some point in like AAA. So I mean, like this is a guy that has a lot of potential, like moves like this, because we are going to get to see him on opening day. So it's going to be really sick. The Angels have signed Aaron Hicks to a 1 year, $10 million deal. So this is the final year of his extension with the Yankees. So they actually will only owe him the league minimum that is prorated of $740,000. So this is an extremely funny move because the Yankees are dumb, and the Angels are a baseball team that are signing guys to still try to remotely be competitive. I don't really know exactly what the plan is. Don't really know how Aaron Hicks moves the needle for you a ton, but sure, they got Aaron Hicks.
Yeah, I don't really know what they're going to do with him because they are pretty loaded in the outfield with Moniak, Taylor Ward, Mike Trout, and Joe Adell. And both Adell and Moniak are out of option, so they have to play next year. And Hicks is not really a needle mover, but yeah, you're right. He was much better after going to the Orioles last year. My Fangraphs is being really weird, so I'm unable to see the splits there. But he is really interesting, and they don't have to pay him anything at all. So that's a very tight-walleted move by the Angels, but it makes sense given, get a fourth outfielder for free, basically. And I think the biggest thing is you talked about Samad Taylor having to leave the Royals when they signed Adam Frazier. Did you hear about Trey Cabbage being DFA'd? Yeah. And have you seen Trey Cabbage's numbers?
Yeah, Trey Cabbage's numbers in the minors were gnarly. He was like a 30-30 guy. He just struck out all the time. That's right. Sort of the craziest thing is he got picked up by their division rival, Houston Astros. Which is wild.
He had 30 home runs and 32 stolen bases, but he struck out 30% of the time, but he also batted .306. Like, I have no idea. He had everything, but he struck out so much. I have no idea what he's going to do, but that's crazy. He was 26 also.
I would be fine with rather having that guy. I sort of see the vision with Hicks. I'm going to be honest. They were paying him absolutely nothing. And I think they're going to platoon him, which that guy, if you did not look at his numbers last year against left-handed pitching, he destroys left-handed pitching, which is awesome because he had a 349 batting average against lefties. He also had a 163 OPS plus. I'm not sure exactly what his WRC plus was against lefties. But Mickey Moniak, if you look at the flip side of that coin, he destroyed righties. So I feel like they'll be platooning and they'll try to find more opportunities for Joe Adell because, like you said, they've all got to play. So I think that sort of fits there. They're paying him nothing. It's just the move to then let Trey Cabbage go, who seems like a guy that you would take a flyer on if you're in this sort of situation. I don't know. That's kind of a weird one to me.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a money thing, it's like both of them are going to be very cheap, and you have so much more control over Cabbage, and there seems to be a lot more potential there, but also like a much lower floor.
Yeah, I don't know. The floor is literally like underground, but what also sucks is they let him go, and he got picked up by the Astros, who will invariably fix him, and he'll hit 40 home runs. Yeah, he had oh my God, last year in the minors he set the exit velocity record in AAA.
Who did?
Trey Cabbage.
Oh my God,
121 mile per hour exit.
Yeah, how do you just let somebody go for free like that? Like, you just tooled the F out, and just the strikeout issues. Like, that's something you can work around.
They did have to make a weird trade. They got like a pretty mid pitching prospect.
Oh, that's good.
They got a guy that sucks, so I don't know. It's sort of weird. I hate this move, to be honest, just because they had to get rid of him. The same thing with the Frazier moves. Like, you're doing this.
It's fine by itself.
It's fine by itself, but then you look at the moves that happen as a result of it. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, maybe they hate Trey Cabbage and he sucks, or he is. I don't know. It's a weird move. We can talk about another move that involves the division rival of the two teams that we were bickering about. And it's the Twins trading Jorge Polanco to the Mariners, who just cannot get second base nailed down long term. They traded him to the Mariners in exchange for Darren Bowen. They got Gabriel Gonzalez, who I mistakenly mentioned earlier. He's a number 3 prospect in the Mariners system. They also got he was also the number 79 prospect in all of baseball. They also got Justin, is it Topa?
Yeah.
And then they got Tony Disco, Anthony DeSclafani, and everyone's favorite baseball player, cash considerations. Gonzalez becomes the number 4 prospect for the Twins, and he is no longer on the top 100. He fell off the top 100.
He did. Yeah, this was an exciting trade because it came out of nowhere. So that makes it fun inherently. But Polanco, while he dealt with injuries the past couple of years, he's a very, like, we know what we're getting from him. He's a pretty solid power hitter who bats from both sides of the plate, and well, not a great defender and doesn't hit for a lot of average. He's definitely a bat that improves this very weak lineup. He makes it a lot deeper than it was looking before, placing him in the middle of the order and moving like Luis Urias and Joshua Haas into a platoon at third base rather than sort of splitting them across the two positions definitely brings up the ceiling and floor of their lineup. So that was a smart move by them. And I don't think they gave up too much, honestly. Like, let's see, who the heck is Darren Bowen? Darren Bowen was born in 2001. He's pitched in only high A at 22 years old, and he had a 3.88 ERA. And so I think he is an unknown right now. And then Topa is like he's a pretty decent reliever. He's not going to be a closer for any team anytime soon. But he is 30. He's going to be 33 next year. He had a 2.61 ERA last year, but not a lot of strikeouts. I think he got by with a lot of weak contact. And then Tony Disco, I mean, giving that up is smart. I think you're giving up the money too, so it offsets Jorge Polanco.
Yeah.
But
we already
Gonzalez,
talked about that being a move anyway. Is like when they get Disco, like what are they going to do with him? We both said like they're probably going to trade him, and we were right.
Yeah, I think Gonzalez is really like, if you think about it as a bigger picture, it's basically like you're basically just giving up Gabriel Gonzalez for him because the rest of the guys at the moment aren't really like needle movers. And Gonzalez is interesting. Got some tools last year, A-ball and high A, 18 home runs and 10 stolen bases as a 19-year-old. So he's still got a ways to go. But yeah, I see how this move works for both teams. Actually, I'm not really sure why the Twins did this. It's because they feel confident in Edouard Julien taking over second base.
I'm assuming so. It feels like it has to be. My Fangraphs is being weird. What's Polanco's control? Like, he can't have. Can't have much more.
They
control.
have this year. They have this year, and then I think there's a club option for 2025.
Okay. Yeah, it's sort of a weird one. I guess they're going to have to put their faith in Edouard Julien, or I guess they could try to throw Royce there, maybe.
Well, I think Royce Lewis is going to be their third baseman, and then it's like they got Julien.
Well, what do they do with Miranda? Like, what do they do with Miranda and a couple?
I think Miranda's going to be a short side platoon guy who plays mostly first base with Kirilloff, and then they've got Kyle Farmer who can be short side platoon at second base with Julien, and then it's really it opens up DH, which is where Polanco was playing mostly last year. And so they have enough guys that I think could work it out. Like if Willie Castro is the DH, or maybe Jose Miranda finally figures things out, or maybe they go and sign somebody. But like DH is such a flexible position nowadays that it's really, you could just circle guys through there, rotate guys through there throughout the year. But I don't know. It's sort of like, as a team that's trying to compete, why would you give up one of your middle of the order bats? Right. But he's been so injury prone the past couple of years. And if you feel like Julien can really be a guy that takes off with that position to himself, then, maybe there's something in there and getting a top 5 prospect for your team.
Maybe they're tearing it down because they're scared of the Royals. They also have Austin Martin kicking around somewhere in their farm system that he's 24. He's either got to get moved or he's got.
Oh, and they got Brooks Lee
somewhere. Yeah. Bro, forgot about him.
So
they got a lot of guys, sort of a logjam coming up. This is the literal third move in 3 years to try to fix second base for the Mariners. And you have to think that Jorge Polanco, at least based on the resume of all 3 of the players that they have talked about, the aforementioned Adam Frazier, last year they had Colton Wong, and now they have Jorge Polanco. They have to figure something out at this position. And their lineup, I know we kind of shit on it a few weeks ago, where it's like, all right, they haven't really added anyone. They've been making moves to try to fix it. And I think I'm happier with where it's at. I like Polanco a lot. It just depends on how much baseball you can get out of him, because he has been really injury prone the last few years. 2021 was last year he really played like a ton. Like 2022 sort of struggled. 2023 only played 80 games. In those games, he's been very productive. It's just like, how much are you really going to get out of him there? So I think as long as he stays healthy, I like this for the Mariners. For the Twins, it's a move. They got Disco to add to their rotation because they sort of needed some guys. They lost Sonny Gray. So I don't know. I think it's a decent move for both sides. It feels like a trade where both teams kind of got what they wanted. So I'm happier with it. If I'm the Blue Jays, though, I am not so happy with how their offseason's been going because they lost out on Ohtani. They've kind of lost out on a few other guys.
Lost out on everyone.
Yeah, literally everyone. They got Yariel. But
sure.
now they can. He's a guy. They can add to their third base, and they can pencil that one in if he's even going to play there, because that's sort of a weird kind of contentious situation as well. But they signed Justin Turner, formerly of the Boston Red Sox, and a cajillion other teams, namely the Dodgers. Signed Justin Turner, 1 year, $13 million deal for him to play potentially at the hot corner. How are you feeling on this move for? Is he going to be 39 or is he going to be 40?
39.
Oof.
Yeah, he's getting up there, but he really hasn't slowed down, which is pretty crazy. Like he sort of did the JD Martinez 2022 where his power sort of disappeared. We saw that with a couple guys in 2022, which was sort of weird, but he bounced back this past year. It was Jose Abreu was the other guy I was thinking of. He's been very solid. He had his lowest WRC plus this past year since 2013, and it was 114. So he's still very solid. He's getting up there in age, but I think he's a very reliable guy even at his old age. And this is a team that needed just any improvement in the offense. I don't think he plays a lot of defense. I think he's going to play a lot of DH, allowing Kevin Biggio, probably Davis Schneider, and Santiago Espinal and IKF to, play around there at third base, second base, and see how that all works out. But yeah, he's he's an improvement to the status quo, which is what you wanted them to do. But given the expectations of this offseason, going after Juan Soto, going after Shohei Ohtani, now it feels like they're probably whiffing on Cody Bellinger. And so far they've just brought back Kevin Kiermaier, added Justin Turner and IKF, and then added Yariel Rodriguez to the bullpen. And then that's it. And it was sort of an offseason where on a team that has underperformed expectations for each of the past 2 years, that, they needed to make a big move to help them take that final step forward to become the juggernaut in the AL East. And it has not happened. And yeah, I don't think Justin Turner is going to be the guy. I would love to see them make another big move. There's still a couple big free agents out there. Will they make it? Probably not. But yeah, it's got to be disappointing to be a Blue Jays fan after having the offseason started with so much promise.
Yeah, at least they still have the cover of MLB The Show with Vladdy to look forward to. If you're a Blue Jays fan and you have not followed Keegan Matheson on Twitter, you should follow Keegan Matheson because he is the best place to get anything about the Jays. The tweet that he said, and I would really like to echo the sentiment, and I think it's more or less your sentiment as well. He said, I like Justin Turner. I think the Blue Jays clubhouse will love him. He is kind of a pretty known, seems like a clubhouse guy. He's a clutch hitter. He seems like a guy that would be welcome on pretty much every baseball team in the majors. He said, much like Brandon Belt a year ago. That does feel very similar. It feels like sort of a similar vibe of player. He said, in terms of fit, it's another signing like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Mentioned that one. He said, that's going to look a lot better if there's still something bigger to come at the end of the offseason. But I think that's the big question. Is there genuinely going to be another big signing for them? There are a couple guys still left in the free agency. Matt Chapman, Cody Bellinger. For me, it felt like they ought to be one of the ones that are really, really in on Cody Bellinger. And that market just seems so strange right now. It's just the move. Like you said, they haven't really made the moves to cement themselves at the top of the AL East, because it felt like at the time when they were sort of coming into the frame, that division was open. This is theirs to try to walk into it and dominate this for the next 10 years. And they just haven't. It just hasn't panned out that way. They have not made the moves that really sort of get them over the line there. And I just don't really know where they go from here, because I think the one or two things that they could add, it feels like Cody Bellinger right now. It feels like Matt Chapman is more or less out of that equation, at least for me. And then before this move with Justin Turner, it felt like the only other real free agent bat that they sort of fit with was Jorge Soler. And now that Justin Turner's your DH, that's probably also out of the question. What do they add? Like, where do they go from here? Because the projections for Blake Snell, it feels like a weird fit. I just don't really know what the plan is with the Jays. It's just been a really disappointing offseason if you're a Jays fan. Like you said, it just sort of sucks. His deal does come loaded with a bunch of incentives. It's a $1.5 million worth of incentives based around plate appearances. You get $125,000 bonuses at 500, 525, 550, and 575 plate appearances. He gets $250,000 bonus at 600, 625, and 650 plate appearances. If he gets to 120 days on the active roster, because he's a guy that sort of struggled with injury, gets $150,000 bonus. And then if he gets to 150 days, it's a $100,000 bonus as well. So Justin Turner, I like the bat. It's just, man, this really sucks that this feels like the big addition to the lineup for the Jays right now. Last move is a weird one. We talked about this before the podcast, but Wandy Peralta signed with the Padres for a 4-year, $16.5 million deal that has an opt-out every single year. It's a 4-year deal with 3 opt-outs, which is insane. But yeah, this is a move that the Padres made, bolstering the bullpen.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to see a guy who's going to be 32 in 2024 get a 4-year deal, and then to have the flexibility provided to him to opt out every year like that. That's something that a player with, a lot of say, a lot of past performance to warrant that. But he sort of has that since going to the Yankees midway through 2021. He has had a sub-3 ERA every year. So he's definitely proven to be very solid as a lefty, and super interesting because the Padres have, since trading Juan Soto, have just focused so intently on their bullpen, because that's all they've done. They got Michael King in the Juan Soto deal, but so far they've added, they traded Scott Barlow for Aniel De Los Santos, but they also added Yuki Matsui, Woo-Suk Go, and now Wandy Peralta. So they really focused on that bullpen this offseason. But that lineup is still so bad. Like right now, you've got like Matthew Batten projected to be the starting third baseman. He's like 28 years old, and I don't even know who he is. Cal Mitchell projected. He's a non-roster invitee to start in left field, and Jose Azocar starting in center field. Is like right now the top 6 is sort of what you'd expect: Ha-Seong Kim, Xander Bogaerts, Tatis, Machado, Cronenworth, and Campusano. But from there, it's like the depth on the offense is like in the dumpster. Hopefully that either provides opportunities to some guys that would otherwise not get them, or that they'll figure something out and go acquire some guys.
Yeah, that lineup is rough, man. I don't know what
it is, but the bullpen is great.
Nice. Yeah, the bullpen is nice. Get him.
We're gonna close out all of our losses so well.
Get out 5 innings and then just get out the way. I don't know. It's a weird sort of. Oh my God, where do they go? Like we talked about the Jays offseason being disappointing, and I like the guys they've added in their bullpen. They've added guys that are good. Like it's not like they're just signing a bunch of bums. I like the moves in a vacuum. It's just like, what are you going to do with your lineup? These moves are great if you add more. Where the hell is the more? Like, kind of get to it if you're going to. It just
go
feels
get Bellinger.
Yeah, go get Bellinger, because they have holes in the outfield. Go get Matt Chapman, so you don't have to try to slide Ha-Seong Kim or start some dude that we've never heard of. Just do.
Well, they got Manny Machado.
Well, where's Manny? Yeah,
Machado's at DH right now because he underwent surgery.
He's injured, but where are you going to start the season at? Right now, their starting lineup's going to have like Oscar Mercado in it. Oscar Mercado should not be playing big league games in 2024, the year of our Lord. That shouldn't be happening.
I think Bellinger actually fits really well with them, considering like they don't really have a center fielder right now. and that would give them more depth across the outfield, which is really their weakest spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that would mean that they would have to give up probably almost $200 million or more.
That's right.
Which I'm not sure, like with Peter Seidler passing away, I'm not sure that's something that they do.
Yeah, that's the thing is like the Padres situation is really hamstrung right now because they've outlaid so much money in the last few off seasons in general. Like they've been extremely aggressive, and that's what you want from your owner. It is. Unfortunately, Peter Seidler passed away, and now that situation can potentially be in flux. Is this going to be a team that's going to be spending a lot in free agency to sign someone like that? Is Cody Bellinger even going to get the amount of money that they want? Because right now it feels like, I mean, Cody Bellinger, he's asking for the world, and it feels like that's not really being offered to him. I feel like he's really being, I don't know if he's being undersold because he had a bounce back year that was, let's face it, I mean, it was pretty lucky. It was aided a lot by BABIP luck. And we don't really know what Cody Bellinger is. Is he back to that? Is he somewhere in the between? That's where I'd stand. I think he's somewhere in the between of, okay, this guy sucked with the last few years of the Dodgers, or is he good? Like, are you going to actually outlay a lot of money? And then the Padres, again, if you're not going to add anyone there, like, what else are your options? There's not many extremely, like, good, like, lower level free agents like Justin Turner's left. There's just not those guys now. Like, to me, it's sort of a strange team to sort of gauge now. Their lineup, like the big four, looks sick. The rest of them are maybe big league players, maybe.
Yeah.
Like Oscar Mercado, no. Michael Batten or whatever you said, don't think so. Like,
then the rotation isn't too great either. You know, like you got a aging Yu Darvish, you got a Joe Musgrove coming off a few injuries last year, and then Michael King, who's never really started a full season, and then from there it's just, you know, prospects.
Yeah, it's a weird time. Weird time. Anyway, we talked about the Padres' excellent bullpen. We can turn it over from them being the setup man to bringing in the closer.
Well done.
For our 88th episode of the podcast.
Beautiful transition. All right. And today we've got BJ Ryan to close out the podcast. BJ Ryan had an 11-year career from 1999 to 2009, during which he pitched for the Reds, the Orioles, and the Blue Jays. He was drafted by the Reds in the 17th round of the 1998 draft and debuted in July of 1999 versus the Dodgers at the age of 23. He tossed 2 innings, allowed 4 hits, 1 run, a walk, and a strikeout, but that would be the only appearance he ever made for the Reds, as he was traded to the Orioles just 3 days later. And he started his career mostly with the Orioles as a left-handed specialist. He logged a 2.95 ERA across 18 1/3 innings in Baltimore after being traded in 1999. But he often struggled mightily with his command, and those issues bled into his success as he posted a terrible 5.91 ERA in 2000. And he actually didn't record his first save until 2001, during which he pitched to a 4.25 ERA and recorded 2 saves. And by 2002, Ryan had yet to prove himself worthy of anything more than a middle relief role as a lefty specialist, as he posted another ERA north of 4, this time 4.68 with 1 save. However, he flipped a switch in 2003 and started to gain better control of his stuff. He bumped his strikeout walk ratio over 2 for the first time in his career, leading to a 3.40 ERA. And then in 2004, the baseball world witnessed his complete emergence as he tossed a career high 87 innings with a career high 122 strikeouts, a 2.28 ERA, and 3 saves. However, he wouldn't take over the closer role from Jorge Julio until the following season, 2005. That year, he was finally recognized as an all-star and was one of the best relievers in baseball. He pitched to a 2.43 ERA with another 100 strikeout season and 36 saves as he earned his first all-star appearance. And that impressive walk year set him up to be one of the most coveted free agents in baseball. He signed a 5-year, $47 million deal with the Blue Jays, the largest contract ever handed out for a reliever at the time, surpassing Mariano Rivera's 4-year, $40 million deal signed prior to 2001. Ryan went on to have the best season of his career during his debut in Toronto, during which he pitched to a career-best 1.37 ERA, a career-best 0.86 whip, and a career-high 38 saves, as he earned his second and final All-Star appearance. Then, after just 4 1/3 innings and 3 saves with an ERA over 12 in 2007, Ryan underwent Tommy John surgery and missed the rest of the season, but he made a successful return in 2008, pitched to a 2.95 ERA with 32 more saves. But by 2009, the injuries brought on by his violent delivery had taken their toll as he pitched to a 6.53 ERA and just 2 saves in 2009, and he'd call it a career after just his age 33 campaign. That would wrap up a career during which he racked up 11.6 baseball reference WAR across 536 and 2/3 innings while striking out 625 batters with a 3.37 ERA, a 1.28 whip, and 117 saves, which is tied for 133rd on the all-time saves leaderboard.
BJ Ryan one time won a game. He was the winning pitcher in a decision without throwing a pitch, which is really funny. He had one batter faced, and he picked off Omar Infante at first. So they took the lead and won. So he won without having to throw a pitch. Sick.
Nice.
Shout out to that guy. But yeah, thank you for sticking with us the entire time. If you have done so, we're still rolling out stuff over the off season. Going to try to get to 100 podcast episodes this year. Should.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Oh yeah, definitely. So make sure you follow the both of us on twitter.com. You can follow me at DVSbert. You can follow Jake Crumpler at Jake Crumpler. Go check him out on all the sites that he writes for because he makes excellent baseball content for the new season, especially for fantasy if you want to win your fantasy baseball leagues.
Thanks. Yeah, you can find a lot of my work at pitcherlist.com as well as baseballhq.com. Davis already mentioned my Twitter at Jake Crumpler, but I did update my website for the first time this offseason. So go check out crumplerbaseball.com. It has all of my work, all my articles, all my podcasts, everything there. But yeah, make sure to stay tuned as we go deeper into the off season and thus into draft season. The content coming out at Pitcher List and thus from me becomes even more plentiful. And as I, complete my rankings, those will be up on my website. So if you find yourself in need of rankings, if you're just getting into fantasy baseball or you want something to go off of and you find me trustworthy for whatever reason, those will be available at some point.
I sure do. Way to go, bud. You should also go check out the Athletes Hub on their Twitter at Athletes Hub and check out the athleteshub.org for just sports-centered content in general. They obviously sponsor our show. So we appreciate that from them. That's all we have for now. Check back in with us next Wednesday at some time, but you have to follow our Twitters to find out. So peace.